Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. Remember, Wednesday Wisdom is sponsored by K-12 Sports Tech, along with their other great sponsors. Let's go ahead and take a listen to their shout outs. Now, don't hit that fast forward button. These are all companies that I've used as an AD or have a direct connection to, and I'm highly recommending that you use them too. So take a listen, then listen to our segment, and then go visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. Like I said, we want to thank K-12 Sports Tech for sponsoring the Wednesday Wisdom segments. K-12 Sports Tech helps athletic directors and vendors connect through education and hands-on consulting services. Athletic directors are invited to join the K-12 Sports Tech AD think tank and help influence how companies shape their tech to serve schools. To get started or to find out more about K-12 Sports Tech, all you have to do is go to k12sportstech.com. That's k12sportstech.com. We want to thank our regular sponsors, including Gipper. Gipper is the official social media graphics solution for us. And if you go to gipper.com, you're going to start creating world-class content for your school's social media channel in seconds. It's going to help you promote your athletes and celebrate your team's accomplishments. Gipper's used and trusted by over 4,000 high school and college programs. It's professional graphic design made simple. Go to gipper.com to get started. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. Their team is going to have you selling your tickets online, not just for athletic events, but for all the events at your school. It's digital ticketing that offers more. Go to hometownticketing.com to get started. We'd like to thank our good friends at Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their score boards in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com to get started. We'd like to thank Ohio University's online Master of Science in Athletic Administration. This affordable 20-month online program focuses exclusively on interscholastic athletic administration. And when you finish, you're not only going to have your master's degree, you're going to have 11 NIAAA leadership training courses that can go towards your RAA or your CAA. You're also going to be part of a nationwide network with connections in K-12 athletics across the country. To get started, just go to ohio.edu/info/MAA. You're going to be glad you did. We'd like to thank Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day. Things like scheduling, student athlete eligibility and clearance. Who doesn't do that every day? Communicating, uploading schedules, you name it. Home Campus does it better and does it faster than any other platform. Go to homecampus.com. That's it. Just go to homecampus.com. We'd also like to say thanks to SnapRaise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and got little, if any, return? Stop right here. Go to snapraise.com. Hands down, the best online fundraiser out there. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it because it works. Go to snapraise.com. Check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraising platform, you found it. Go to snapraise.com. You're going to be very glad you did. We'd also like to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the sports, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Their interactive touchscreen video consoles are a great way for you to celebrate your school's unique history and your proudest moments. For more information, all you have to do is go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. You're going to be glad you did. We'd like to say thanks to Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I wanted a platform that was going to work for all of our teams, and Huddle came through like a champ. Our coaches loved it, our athletes, even our fans loved all the tools that Huddle provided that let our kids experience athletics at the highest level. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users. Turn your school into a huddle school. And we'd like to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. If you never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents, your coaches, or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Athletic Surveys is going to connect you. They're going to connect you to a group you probably already hear from, the complainers, the gripers, but that's only a small percentage. They're also going to connect you to the 98% that supports your program. And that information is tremendously valuable when you're talking to a frustrated parent, or maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. We've truly got an old friend back with us, Dr. Megan Buning. Regular listeners will recognize that name, but if you're new, Dr. Buning is part of the very successful, very popular FSU coach program. Also has an incredible background in athletics as an athlete and a coach at the D1 level. Now a researcher. She works at the national and international level in mental performance coaching. And she's also a color analyst on the SEC network for softball, among other things, and a new horse owner. Dr. Megan Buning, welcome back to Wednesday Wisdom.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate that. Yeah, I love the slip in of the horse. I was telling you just now how just this morning we purchased one of my dreams, a horse. So here we are. I'm sure I'll have some tips about mental performance in animals maybe on our next one.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So listeners, shoot me an email if you want to hear that segment. Let me know. Well, again, Dr. Bunny, you and I connected, I'm going to say a couple of years ago, but I just love how you have taken your love of, competing as a D1 athlete, as a coach, and now a lot of people give advice and tips, but you're doing it from a scientific method. Everything you share with our listeners, I mean, it's researched, it's fact. If you do this, it will work for you and your athletes. So what do you have for our listeners this week on Wednesday Wisdom?
So this week, what I decided to do is kind of visit what might be something you've heard about before, but there's a reason that I wanted to bring this forward. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference between a habit, a routine, and a ritual. And the reason I wanted to bring this forward is because in my work with clients, particularly this year, I have seen a lot of athletes get those things confused. And so they're relying on maybe a ritual versus a routine, and they don't even know it. So I want to talk a little bit about what that is. So, first, I want to talk about a habit. So, a habit is a pretty established thing that you do. It can be a behavior. It can be even kind of, if you think about thoughts, there are thoughts that come with when you repeat a behavior. So a habit is settled, it's regular, it's practice. It's one of those things that's hard to give up. Now, what is a routine? A routine is a sequence of actions that are regularly followed. It's a fixed kind of program. So what will happen is routines are intentional. So we're going to do these actions in a particular sequence for a purpose. And a lot of times you do those intentionally so often that they become an unconscious habit. So your habit are things that are a lot of times you don't even realize that you're doing, or you're not having to put a lot of thought into them because they're, as we like to say, burned into your brain. Now, what is a ritual? Well, a ritual or a superstition, if I say that, that might ring some bells, is a ceremony of sorts. And you have a series of actions that you perform, but you do them in a prescribed order. So it kind of sounds like a routine, doesn't it? So we're going to kind of talk a little bit through that and what the difference is. when you look at kind of distinguishing between, do you need to keep this or a habit or a routine or even a ritual, here are some questions that I want you to ask yourself. When you do this habit, routine, or ritual, is it intentional, or did it just come from a response to something that you're currently doing? So was it more reactive that you started doing this thing? I want you to ask yourself, is what you're doing, is it uplifting, or is it causing maybe some stress, some negativity in your life? I also want you to ask how it's affecting your physical or mental health, or if it is at all, and kind of take note of that. Another question is, would you miss it if it were gone? If you didn't do it, would you miss it? And then lastly is what you're doing, does it align with the things that are important to you? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the ritual part. So if you look in the literature, a ritual could be defined as something that is unusual, it's repetitive, it's a rigid behavior. The person that's doing this thing seems to, they think it has a positive effect. But in reality, when we look at ritual, there's not really a causal link to what they're doing and the outcome or their performance. So it's a repetitive act. It can be sequential. It's very distinct from a technical preparation. And here's the clutch thing here is that we'll take athletes. Whoever's doing this ritual, a lot of times you'll see it in athletes, is they think that it controls their outcome of their performance. There's some sort of luck involved. Okay. What happens is these ritualistic tendencies, they come about because they're a result of something that's uncertain in their circumstance. And so the person that's experiencing this will create these behaviors to try to create some certainty around it. So let's think about some rituals that you might have seen. A lot of times I'll hear athletes say, well, I don't change my socks. If I change my socks, that's bad luck. Anything that's attached to luck might be a clue that it's a ritual. If I don't wear my hair a certain way, I know I used to do this. If I wore my hair in braids, I didn't pitch well. Right? So I'm attaching my performance to wearing my hair in braids. So think about that. Think about how that sounds when you say it out loud. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? Recently, I had an athlete that said she did not play well unless she had a Snickers bar before the game. All right. So when we think about rituals, again, I'll emphasize you are attaching your performance to something, an action, an object, something like that. It's not productive, and you're creating a scenario that if, for instance, I have to wear my hair in a braid to keep it from blowing in my face. Now I might go out and think I'm not going to play well. The athlete with the Snickers bar, she may not have had access to get a Snickers bar that day or had time to eat one. So if she didn't eat a Snickers bar at a specific time before her game, now she's saying she's not going to play well. If my socks that I always wear and never wash and never change get a hole in them and I can't wear them, I'm not going to play well. And so that becomes dangerous to our performance. All right. So one of the best ways to identify if it's a ritual is to ask those questions. Is it contributing to my performance? Is it aligning with what is valuable to me? Is it creating stress? Think about if my sock gets a hole in it, that creates stress. If I can't get a hold of a Snickers bar, that creates stress. Okay. Say it out loud, just like what I did. I'm not going to perform well if I don't eat a Snickers bar before my game. And then really think about that. Challenge that thought. Am I really not going to perform well if I don't eat a Snickers bar? So you're telling me that I'm about to go play at a Power 5 institution for my sport, but I'm not going to play well if I don't eat a Snickers bar? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It sounds silly. And so challenge it, call it out. And what you'll find is if it doesn't make sense, if it's creating stress, if it's not contributing and you're attaching your performance to that behavior or action, that's a ritual. And saying, I always say its name, and that makes it lose its power when you say it out loud. So then we can talk about, all right, now let's think about what we can be doing for maybe to set us up for a more productive performance. And so that's where we get into routines. And so routines are intentional. These are sequences of behaviors and actions that we do for a purpose. There is some sort of value. And so what we know about routines, and you can look in the parenting literature, that's where I see a lot of the talk on routines. You can look in the literature around particular cognitive functions, particularly individuals that have ADD and those sorts of things, and young children. Routines can help function. We like comfort. So if you think about a routine, even when you were a child, what did your parents have you do? Well, you probably had a bedtime routine. So especially as babies, we're trying to get them to learn how to sleep, right? So we're going to do certain things. We're going to give them a bath. We're going to feed them. We're going to rock them. We're going to sing, play music, whatever that is. And then we're going to put them down and they're hopefully going to sleep. And eventually they get into that routine. Routines provide a sense of comfort. There's a sense of we can expect what's going to happen. Like we know ideally kind of what's coming up next. There's not going to be uncertainty. But the difference, again, is they're intentional behaviors, and we're not attaching our performance to the routine itself. All the routine is doing is setting us up in a way that we feel comfortable to help us perform better. So, Jake, I'm going to ask you, think about what you do. And it doesn't even have to be a sport routine. It can be any type of routine that you think brings comfort to you that might help you do better. What would that be?
Well, you tell me if this fits. I record my podcasts just about every day. And so I'm opening up the browser. I'm opening up my sponsor website so I can do my commercials sequentially. I've got my script here in front of me. And if I don't do that, which has happened occasionally, the podcast still succeeds, but I'm a nervous wreck as it's unfolding. So where does all that fit in?
Yeah, that's a great example. So the routine, this is your ideal. These are the things that you're going to do because you know if you do these things, you're going to feel more comfortable and at ease. You're going to feel more prepared. But at the same time, you recognize if I skip something in my routine or if something goes wrong in that routine, the podcast or my performance is still going to happen and be successful probably. I just may not feel as good as about it. So you're making
Right.
adjustments. You have what's called mental agility. You're not attaching just because I can't prepare this certain way doesn't mean that the outcome is going to be poor. And you have that recognition. And that's the key. There are things you're doing to prepare, but you're not attaching the outcome to that preparation.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's a perfect example. And so when you think about a pre-performance routine, I want to give you a scientific definition of this. All right. And this comes from Morin, 1996. A PPR, a pre-performance routine is, quote, a sequence of task-relevant thoughts and actions which an athlete engages in systematically prior to his or her performance of a specific sports skill. And so a lot of times these routines, they help the athlete regulate cognitive and behavioral strategies. They help to increase concentration because their routine maybe is situated where it helps them focus on task relevant cues. It helps athletes kind of in this preventative, I feel comfortable, I'm doing these things, I'm repeating these thoughts. So I'm not going to be as likely to dwell on negative thoughts. You're able to more appropriately select performance behaviors that are productive. And you're able to slip in kind of this automatic role of whatever it is that you're going to do. So you're minimizing distractions, reducing anxiety, getting that confidence up because ideally this is what happened. And then again comes in that ability to flex. When things go wrong, we are shifting and we are carrying on as best we can. sometimes when we feel off in our performance or something's just not right, sometimes all we need to do to kick that back in is to go back to that routine, start over. So we want to repeat that routine. So for instance, I'll give you one on the pitching rubber. When I was in the middle of a game and I felt a little off, a lot of times what was happening is my rhythm between when I caught the ball from the catcher and when I went back to the pitching rubber to start getting the sign to throw the next pitch, I was going too fast or too slow. And that's a routine in itself. Sometimes that pre-performance routine it includes some sort of rhythm or timing. And so what I would have to do is either call timeout or I would have to pause a little bit longer. And then I would kick right back into, all right, I'm going to get on the pitching rubber. I'm going to move the dirt in front of the rubber a little bit. I'm going to clear my old drag mark. Then I'm going to go back. I'm going to look down. I'm going to look up. Okay, so whatever that routine was for me, and sometimes that's all it takes to kick you back into that rhythm and to get you back into that focus. Okay. Now, when you're thinking about routines, this should provide a sense of comfort. So it should get you prepared. So when you go through your process of preparing for the podcast and it goes the way you want to, do you feel more comfortable?
Well, yeah, naturally, yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm not thinking in my head. I've got that list right in front of me. And I don't want to sidetrack you, but as you were talking about, the routines and the rituals, uh, baseball and softball came to mind, particularly not so much from a pitcher, but I can see your point, but in the batter's box. I mean, all the uh, mannerisms that you'll see. Um, and again, not being a baseball player growing up, I wasn't very good. That's why I got into track. I don't know, but here I'll put you on the spot now, Miss Expert. Does that help? Is there science behind all that here and this and all that? Does that help performance? I guess either physically or mentally, mental performance.
Yeah, and that's a really great question. And so one of the things you have to think about, and these were the kind of my final questions I was going to leave everybody, but I'll apply them now and then provide my thoughts on that because I know exactly what you're talking about. But the first, one thing you want to think about when you're doing a pre-performance routine is what is the purpose? Is it related to improving your performance? Two, is it working? Is it working for you? And three, do you need to keep doing it? All right, so that's kind of the ultimate. If one and two are identified, then if you need to keep doing it, probably answers itself, right? But a lot of times, especially in these ball sports, you'll see hitters. They'll get in and they'll adjust their batting gloves. They'll Velcro, do all this kind of stuff. And so, to me, without speaking, without knowing from that athlete's perspective, to me, it looks like a ritual. Do they feel like they need to do this? But what I don't know is how are they connecting that movement to maybe an action that they need to perform in their hitting? And so some of those kind of ritualistic looking routines, you want to make sure that the athlete isn't connecting them to their performance. So if I don't undo my straps 5 times and touch my elbow 4 times, then is that going to mean I'm not going to hit or I'm not going to play well? If they're attaching to performance, it's a ritual. Now, what they might be doing is visually going through their head parts of their swing. This is a reminder to keep their shoulder in. This is a reminder to do something with that. And, the batting gloves, that can be just them, who knows, warming up their wrist. I don't know. Or, that's what they need that action to attach to their focus. I don't know. And so when you see those sorts of routines, I think the biggest thing is, does the athlete think it's productive? How is it productive? Maybe it's just, it helps them ground to that moment and get away from the distractions, because I could see the Velcro providing a sound. So they're grounding into the sound of the Velcro coming off, which is a thing. And as long as they're not attaching it to their performance, then who are we to say it's not valuable to them? But yeah, so that's really what I wanted to share. And just kind of remember, I briefly mentioned habits because Habits go a little bit deeper than routines. So your routines, and you can establish unproductive routines, you can establish unproductive habits. So again, questioning what's the purpose? How is it related to your performance? Is it working? And do you need to keep doing it?
Yeah, well, I've got a ton of questions, but we just don't have time. But we will do this. And again, for our listeners, Dr. Buning, she teaches in the FSU coach program. She's a consultant on the highest of levels in performance, particularly mental performance. So if one of our listeners want to find out more about habits and routine and rituals and how they tie into performance, or find out more about the FSU coach program, how do they do that?
Yes. So you can email me directly at m.bunning, Buning, at fsu.edu. And you can check out our program at fsu-coach.edu. And you can follow me on Twitter. I put some stuff out on Twitter occasionally at Dr. Bunning.
Now, when this episode airs, it's still going to be FSU Coach is having a big coaching clinic in June, right, in Orlando. So for our Florida guests, I still haven't been invited to present, by the way. Tell our listeners about that and how they can get signed up to hear you and Dr. Tim Baghurst and a lot of other great people.
Yeah, so this will be our second coaches clinic, which is a form of professional development, and we are hosting it near the Orlando area. So if you go on our website, the first page that'll pop up is registration for the clinic. There is a lineup. It's about a day and a half, maybe even a day. I can't remember what we did this year, but there are a lot of great speakers that are going to provide insight from mental performance, leadership, all the things. I actually will not be there this year, but Dr. Baghurst has it locked down, and there will be a lot of other wonderful folks that you can meet. If you want to meet me, connect with me, and we'll figure it out. But I'm here and there and all over the place this summer. So
And of course, you're a new horse owner.
I'll be
Well,
at the barn most of the
yeah.
summer. Yes.
Well, Megan, again, always great to hang out with you and listeners. I'm telling you, you really need to connect with Dr. Megan Buning. She's on LinkedIn, has a very strong Twitter game too. So make sure you follow her on Twitter. Thanks as always, and all the best moving forward.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you bet. For our listeners, we appreciate you. And just a reminder, we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. Thanks again for listening. Make sure you connect with Dr. Megan Buning, and we'll see you next time on Wednesday Wisdom. Dr. Megan Buning, FSU coach. Make sure you connect with her. Again, she's on LinkedIn and Twitter. Before we go, we do want to thank our sponsors. And remember, Wednesday Wisdom is sponsored by K12 Sports Tech, along with our other sponsors. Go to k12sportstech.com to find out how you can be a member of their AD think tank. We want to thank all of our other sponsors, including Gipper, Huddle, Hometown Ticketing, Snap, Raise, online fundraising, Vital Signs, Wall of Fame, the Ohio University Master in Athletic Administration program, Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack, Sideline Interactive, and Home Campus. Go visit these companies. Remember, these are all companies that I used as an athletic director or have a direct connection to. You should be using them too. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Wednesday Wisdom. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.